I personally know quite a few people who decided to leave the church or break their covenants and start getting into same-sex relationships. So many of them have this hope that the church is going to change eventually.
Could you imagine if they sold like green tea or coffee at Deseret Book?
Following these rainbow-colored breadcrumbs right into this big rainbow gingerbread house where they eat you up spiritually. And they're like, ha, got ya!
They were told by their bishop, it's okay to same-sex date and make out and everything as long as you don't have sex.
And now for a cultural call-out. We sure don't appreciate that.
Welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm. I'm joined today by my brother Tanner and a special guest, Timber Harward. He is a good friend to the channel. And today we are talking about specifically a cultural call-out that has to do with a story. This was a while back. I was walking with one of my relatives. We were doing something, our couple, we were doing some kind of activity. And as we were walking and talking, this relative of mine leans over and says, one day, I think that they're going to allow same-sex ceilings to be a thing in the temple. And I thought, whoa, that's really out in left field. And it was like that meme, hold up, wait a minute. Something ain't right, because the church that I grew up in, the family proclamation was pretty central to my entire belief system. So I was like, oh, that's pretty kooky. Maybe there's some kind of Alex Jones figure in the church that's preaching these crazy ideas, and so we'll just chalk it up to crazy kooky podcasting, And then I go about my day. A couple days later, we're hanging out with another family member, and that same talking point comes up as we're doing something with them. They're like, yeah, one of these days I think the temple is going to allow same-sex ceilings. And I was like, have you been talking to that other sibling? And they're like, no. And I was like, wait, where did you hear this from? And they were like, I think everyone in the church knows that by now. I was just like, what is going on? Why am I so left out of the news on this? Why is it so pervasive that not one but two close family members are telling me that this is something that's going to happen? And these family members, they don't subscribe to church podcasts. They don't follow LDS influencers at all. For that reason, I brought Timber on to help us navigate the issue of same-sex ceilings. Where did this idea come from? Why is it so pervasive? And what are we supposed to do about it today?
That's a really long story. So I created a slideshow that I can hopefully give some context to this from my perspective, and just so your viewers know a little bit about my background and why I am somewhat of an, I don't know if I would call myself an authority, but I've served in a couple different organizations that minister to individuals who may struggle with same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria. And I myself lived a gay lifestyle before joining the church, and I still experience same-sex attraction. And so all this information I'm going to convey is from my service and through my personal search, looking for faithful resources that are going to help me keep my covenant. So let's get into this popular movement that's promoting same-sex ceilings. And I put in there that it's not just a fringe movement anymore, because to be honest, I would say the majority of members who have doubts over this issue or are struggling with this issue themselves in their personal life, they believe the church is going to change. So why don't we move on to the next slide? Okay, before I get into this, I just have to put out a disclaimer here. Although we're going to be addressing specific individuals in this presentation, I guess, I just want to make it clear I have no hate or ill will towards these individuals. Although I'm deeply concerned with the false doctrine that they're spreading and the influence it's having on people, including people in my personal life, I still have charity for these individuals, and I hope someday they repent and change their mind, because these individuals we're going to discuss, Ben Schillaty and Charlie Bird, by all accounts, aside from their false doctrinal views, I think they're really great people. They're compassionate. They have great personalities. They do a lot of good, but they're also deceiving a lot of people. So I think
And like,
I honestly think they're doing what's best to help promote compassion and love in the church.
I see. That was an Old Testament level but that you threw in there. Like they saying like, hey, I heard words of like repentance, false doctrine, change, and so yeah, that's some big feelings I'm sensing under the surface there. But Tanner, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna agree with Timber that I don't think we're highlighting people just to call them out, but it's more like just finding the canaries in the coal mine, right? Just finding
Yeah,
a couple examples of people who are just at the forefront of what's becoming a very popular movement within the church.
yeah, yeah. So to do that, I'm starting out by talking about Ben Schillaty and Charlie Bird because that they're kind of like the epicenter of all this, you might say. They're the two biggest influencers in the church. And then as we discuss other resources and stuff, it'll make more sense why I keep bringing up these individuals. Okay.
Okay.
So Ben Schillaty, really quick, he used to work for the BYU Honor Code office. He's an openly gay member of the church. He uses that label, not me.
Real quick, can you
And
define that? Like, what does that mean? Openly gay member of the church? Because those seem like contradictory terms.
people use it differently. The way he uses it is that he experiences same-sex attraction. However, he is choosing not to date men. And it's very evident that his choice to not date men is not because he believes that it's incongruent with church teaching, but rather because he wants to keep his temple recommend. Do you understand?
Yeah,
So,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, because
Okay.
he's posted a couple different things about this where he says things like, I would rather not be single, but because I want to not be excommunicated, I'm going to stay single for now and not
Oh,
date
I
men.
see.
It's
Okay.
kind of
I see what you're saying.
yeah, that's a very diplomatic approach to saying something that might not should not be said. I don't know.
That's a lot of the story of these influencers we're going to get into and resources is a lot of it is very diplomatic, vague language, but it implies a lot of it implies that the church is going to change. So, or they imply that it's going to change. So real quick, continue to go talk about Ben Schillaty. Um, sorry, yeah, stay on that one. He wrote A Walk in My Shoes, which was published by Deseret Book, and you can still buy it at Deseret Book today. Um, it's a pretty benign book, honestly. It just talks about his personal experience and how to be an ally to LGBT members, and it doesn't really say anything scandalous.
Right.
So
And so,
he
what do
went
you
on,
mean by ally? Not to be like all Jordan Peterson, but a lot of these terms
yeah.
for me, I feel like have been co opted by political movements. And I just don't know if you're using it in that sense or in a different sense.
Well, okay. So ally can mean a lot of different things. Generally, what it means is someone who supports LGBT individuals, and support can mean a lot of different things, but in my opinion, the vast majority of people who call themselves allies, they they're kind of the people who have this unbridled compassion where they believe in order to be compassionate and loving towards LGBT individuals, you have to support all their choices,
Oh,
especially entering into a gay marriage, or gender transitioning. That would be allyship.
okay. So these are the people that
hmm
might be like flying rainbow flags and wearing the rainbow pins on their lapels and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Okay.
that's what Ben Schillaty brings up, and I'll point that out in a couple slides from now. But let's continue, just real quick. Let's go through this. So,
Yeah, yeah.
Ben Schillaty, he went on to co-host a podcast called Questions from the Closet. It's now called. Let's see, what is it called? Sorry. All Out in the Open is the new name of it.
Seems like a natural
And
transition from the closet to it's all out in the open. Very cute.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's kind of needed. It's kind of needed to be that way because his co-host Charlie Bird, he we'll talk about him next, is in a gay partnership, and so um, that this picture on the far right hand side where it's kind of like a peach color with the where it says open at the top, that is one of the podcasts that they released. It was like a few months ago where
Yeah.
he talks about being denied a temple recommend because he performed a civil gay marriage. So this is the type of person Ben Schillaty is, and
Right.
Yeah,
uh,
I was gonna say, what's even the as the bishop in that situation? What's even the protocol for that? That seems like it's gray area at best.
he did eventually end up getting his recommend renewed. He talks about it in this podcast.
Mm.
But it was kind of by technicality because the bishop and stake president didn't explicitly tell him he couldn't. So they
Oh, I
gave him the
see.
benefit of the doubt.
So it was like a whole ask for forgiveness instead of permission approach.
Yeah.
Actually,
So
yeah, I watched that one, and it seemed like kind of a nothing burger. I wasn't sure why it was a podcast episode because, from what I gather, like his bishop was like, I don't know how to handle this, and so he went to the stake president, and it took a while to figure out what the protocol was. So that meant it took a while for him to get his temple recommend approved and signed off
but he
of,
got it.
but he got it. So it wasn't
But he
really
got
like
it.
a straight up denial. It was just like, can you give us some time to figure this out?
Right.
But if
Yeah.
you listen to the podcast, it does sound like he does kind of share it that way, in that lens of I was rejected and then I was approved, which
Right.
is technically correct, I guess, but the framing is a little off to me. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like I mean, whether he got it back or not, the point is that this is the example he's leading to his listeners and to people who esteem him as a good role model is that he is living as close to the line as possible to keep his temple recommend without going across.
Right. And I think that brings up a really good question. Not to step on your line there, but
No,
who
you're good.
are his followers? Like, how many subscribers are we talking about? How many followers does he have? And do we know where that audience lies in terms of demographics?
It's huge. I mean, he's all over the place. I'm gonna show you that in a
It's
minute.
pretty big, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. So let's move on to Charlie Bird. Then we'll just see how both Ben and Charlie are just all over the place in these LDS sponsored resources. Okay, Charlie Bird. Top left-hand corner. That's an article that is still up on LDS Living of Charlie because he was Cosmo the Cougar for BYU Provo.
Very fun.
And he came out. Yeah. He's super talented. I'll give him that. Like he's incredibly talented and athletic. Like he did a great job. So and he published a book through Deseret Book as well. It's no longer on the shelves, but not by Deseret Book's choice. He after Charlie got same-sex married, he pulled his books voluntarily. So I'm like, okay, good for
Yeah.
you that you
Good for him,
recognize
yeah.
that that's not in harmony. But at one point, Without a Mask, his book was published at Deseret Book by Deseret Book. He wrote a second book which wasn't published by Deseret Book. This was after he got gay married. And that on the far right hand bottom corner, that's him and his same-sex partner.
Gotcha.
So so that is a little bit about Charlie, and again, him and Ben are co-hosts on that All Out in the Open podcast.
You're saying they have quite a bit of reach, if I understand it correctly. I haven't looked into their accounts personally. Are we talking about maybe like hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands?
I couldn't give an
Quantify
estimate
that.
on it. I
A
don't
lot,
know.
though.
I mean, their books were published. Well, one of them is still being sold at Deseret Book. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that at least gives them a sense of legitimacy. to their message.
And real quick, how church sponsored is Deseret Book? If they are super church sponsored, maybe we need to revisit the employee training on which books to accept and which books to push. Is that just me? Am I being crazy out here?
Yeah,
I don't know. There's some wild ones out there. Yeah. I don't know who's in charge of that department, but
I mean,
would
it
agree
seems
with
pretty
that.
closely tied with the church because, I mean, you go buy your garments at Deseret Book, you know?
Well, that's the
So
issue. That's the issue I have is like this is the place where this is the only place you can go to buy your garments unless you're in Salt Lake City. You can go to the distribution center,
right.
but they're always there. So it's my understanding that Deseret Book is not directly overseen by the brethren. They have their people they appoint, but it is let's face it, it's a church run business. So part of that business being selling garments, and they're also selling these books of the brethren. So alongside books of published or written by the brethren, you have these resources here up on your screen. These are still things you can find buy at Deseret Book. I'm surprised that they still have this one with Charlie Bird in the middle there. Because
Oh,
Why do you
yeah.
say that?
I think it might just be like oversight on their part. But they definitely still have Ben Shalati. Listen, Learn, and Love. I'm not going to get into them too much, but basically Richard Ostler was a YSA bishop, and he had a lot of LGBT members in his ward, and he had a lot of compassion. So he started doing this podcast where he listened to people's stories on all sides of the spectrum on this. And to give him credit, he is pretty fair that he will interview some more Orthodox members and some more heterodox members. But it's pretty evident with the things that he says that he is implicitly hoping for change in the church. Going
which is what
to
we're
the
seeing. Like, seems like we're just having this rampant clash of culture and doctrine, right?
Yeah.
Like just a massive wave of culture hitting the doctrinal pillars of the church. And like Hayden, you saw with your family members, it's just kind of washing around around Zion. It's just kind of everyone's immersing in it. So like that's going to be a really hard problem to solve if those people who are wishing for this change, wishing for gay sealings, don't receive that. Like what's the end result of that? That looks scary and confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it gives, like I said before, Deseret Book is giving these individuals more authority because they're publishing them at an official church-sponsored organization, right?
Oh yeah,
And,
I mean, sorry to cut you off again, but could you imagine if they sold like green tea or coffee at Deseret Book? Like it's a very similar vibe. It's like
You get some
we preach against
Folgers
certain
alongside
things.
your copy of
Yeah.
President
It's like you have
Nelson's
to
biography or something.
pass through Starbucks to get to your garments. It's weird to have these messages conflicting while you're going through to get one of the most sacred parts, access to one of the most sacred parts of our religion, which is your garments and other temple clothing. So that's kind of a red flag for sure.
yeah, I would say it's also probably like equivalent to this, like having a Planned Parenthood employee or manager, whoever, who is writing a book about how to support people who are going through an unplanned pregnancy. She never explicitly says you should get it aborted, but in her personal life and advocacy, she's all about abortion, right? So,
Oh yeah, with stories like this is a woman who aborted her baby and she's having a good life and she's happy, like and small subtle stories and narratives that you're pushing to kind of promote it without openly saying it, right?
without openly saying it. Yeah, and
Right.
Charlie Bird is a lot more open with his views and like very like explicit with his views. Ben Shalati is he's very careful to say the right thing.
Very
So
tactical.
yeah. So on the far right hand side of this slide, you're gonna see a video. Okay, hold on, back up. Deseret Book put out this series of videos to address different really difficult topics to help inspire like faith and how to work through these difficult topics. And so you can see up at there, this is right off the website, that little blurb. It says, "What is Seek? Seek is a collection of online video courses created by Deseret Book to respond to the real challenges, needs, and circumstances of Latter-day Saints." So each course is taught by a trusted instructor who will give you concrete takeaways, inspiring insights, etc. Anyway, so the one that they have for LGBT issues is Ben Shalati. And he gives it's like almost an hour. I think he talks about how to be a faithful LGBTQ ally.
That's kind of crazy to me, just to interject real quick, because I feel like the principles of compassion and mercy and judgment that Christ teaches should be enough to be anyone's friend, through any struggle that they're having. I don't know if you need like a specific one for this issue.
Well, not to him. In this discussion, he specifically says like wearing a rainbow or flying a pride flag is a great way to support your LGBT member. So
yeah, don't like that.
Yeah, wait a second. Because I remember something along the lines, correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere in the Bible, doesn't it say like you have to become like a new creature, become born again or something like that? It seems like this is like saying I was born this way, work around me, instead of I need to change myself and work around the Savior, just like everybody else.
Well, that's what Charlie Bird says. Charlie Bird is very explicit about that he believes his spirit is gay and he will be gay in the next life. And so he says that all over the place in his book, in his podcast that he does with Ben. So
how does that feel for you? Like, how do you receive that going through similar struggles?
Specifically that doctrine? Or that false doctrine?
Yeah, that idea that he's sharing.
Well, I know it's false because there's a lot of scriptures to refute it. And the church has been pretty clear about this in 3 different dispensations. So, it's clear to me that that's false doctrine, but it's frustrating to see that he has been given traction by major LDS platforms to teach this to other people, especially vulnerable people. Especially vulnerable youth who are like trying to figure their lives out and like whether they're going to stay in the church or not. Like just the fact that voices like Ben's, like Charlie's, are being spread out by Deseret Book, by BYU, where they used to record their podcast. Like,
it also seems really like it would be like a confusing resource for parents too, because some parents might be struggling with knowing how to help their youth who may be struggling with same-sex attraction, and they might turn to a course like this and hear like, hey, get the rainbow paraphernalia, fly the rainbow flag, get the rainbow pins. And if you're doing that, I don't know if he's advocating like go to the pride parade or anything like that, but I don't think it would be too big of a hop, skip, and a jump of logic to say, well, why don't I just go to this parade, and why don't I start hanging around other people that wear this stuff?
He goes to them. He goes to them himself. He's posted about it. So,
interesting.
And but the craziest part about that is like, there's that old saying, tell me who your friends are and I will tell you who you are. If you spend a lot of time with those people whose ideology is directly against the church, then does it stand to reason that eventually they would start adopting that ideology as well? I mean, you go to Deseret Book, it's got the soft music going, it's got the Paul Cardall, it's the piano going, it's got like the church carpeting in there that's like green, and it's very well air conditioned and everyone speaks in spirit voice at the counter. So it feels very much like church. And so I like what you said, Tanner, earlier about they have almost their own authority that they're blessing all of these books with. I think Quick Media called it a shadow organization, saying, all right, here are the keys to that. Now go and preach and evangelize this gospel to as many that will eat it up. Yeah. Which is kind of icky. Has me feeling a little weirded out at the end of the day.
Gives you the ick, yeah. Well, they have authority, like implicit authority through association and through atmosphere, because it does feel like the temple. It does feel like the church when you walk in. So everyone's talking in calm tones, and there's portraits of the Savior everywhere. There's portraits of the temple everywhere. And then there's books like these on the shelf. So it would not, like, if I just walked in and saw it, I would just assume, oh, this is okay. Like everyone does.
Right.
Well, exactly. And this is this is the dangerous thing, spiritually dangerous thing, is that most of their surface level stuff that you see at Deseret Book, or even like Ben has been invited to do a ton of firesides across the country. And I went to one here in Idaho Falls. And to be honest, I agreed with almost everything he said. It was a great fireside. I felt the spirit there, but people get hooked on it because they get this little glimmer of hope that, okay, I can make it in the church, things are going to be great, and then they go to their podcast, the questions from the what used to be questions from the closet, and there they say things that explicitly go against church doctrine, like and I have a whole list of this if you want it, it's on my blog, where they say things like the family proclamation doesn't specifically exclude same-sex couples, that that the borders of Zion will eventually be able to include all these people in the church. Like, not that they're going to make any changes to get out of a same-sex relationship, but that the church will eventually accept it. They also say things like gender transitioning isn't necessarily isn't sinful, and that your gender doesn't necessarily, your spirit gender doesn't necessarily correspond with your body, your body's gender. They've also said that people who are in same-sex relationships right now are keeping their covenants. So they say a ton of stuff like this on their podcast, but you don't hear it. But all you get at Desert Book is the milk toast. Very
Yeah,
stuff.
so there's a
Right,
funnel
right.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
So
a funnel of.
So you're
and
following these like rainbow colored breadcrumbs right into this big rainbow gingerbread house where they eat you up spiritually. Where they're like, "Ha ha, got ya!" So it's the old bait and switch. It's the old Hansel and
Yeah.
Gretel.
And
Yeah,
look, I
well,
get it. Yeah, because there's a cultural discomfort around this issue in the church, right? There's a lot of people who just don't like the conflict that comes with having clear doctrine that, in essence, would exclude people who do not follow the laws and commandments of that doctrine. And
yeah.
so, like, culturally, people see this and they go to those firesides and they hear that's that hope you're talking about, Timber. Like, maybe this can all be okay. We can all be friends and we'll never have any conflict whatsoever. And they fall into this funnel where they, it just goes deeper and deeper. And all of a sudden, it's just a prevalent idea, widely accepted, that we'll have gay ceilings, which, if you want to go start your own church and believe that, that's okay. Like, I don't actually have problems with people living their own lives the way they want to, but it just doesn't fit with what we believe and what we've stated we believe. It would undo so much of the foundations of our doctrine to make a change like that just wouldn't be recognizable anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is the Community of Christ, which is the former RLDS.
There you go.
They support gay marriage now. So,
interesting.
However, they don't believe in sealing because they don't accept Section 132. But that's a whole different topic.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
Anywho,
Yeah.
Why don't we go to the next slide? This one's just another one showing how pervasive this is. So we already talked about Ben and Charlie. So Faith Matters is a huge organization. I would say they probably cater to hundreds of thousands of members worldwide. They hold a conference called the Restore Conference. And as you see there on the far left, who are they having speak? Charlie Bird and Charlie Bird's gay partner, Ben Shalati. The middle person is Allison Dayton. She runs another organization called Lift and Love, and we'll talk about that later. In the middle there, that's the Lift and Love founder with John Gustav Raffel. He started an organization called Affirmation. We'll talk about that later, but he's excommunicated. His partner has never been a member of the church, from what I understand. And so they brought him on to talk about how he's still in the church, he's still interested in and the church is hopefully going to allow him and his partner back into the church with open arms, basically, is kind of what they were presenting on. Another thing that they're promoting on their website, this actually isn't, this is the Gather conference that they're promoting, which is Lifton Love's conference. And at that, there's going to be a openly gay Methodist bishop. So she's married to a woman. Um, and so that's going to be one of the speakers that they have. So that's just giving you a sampling of the individuals that Faith Matters is promoting. So,
And Faith Matters is
Wow.
huge. My mother-in-law, like
Faith
it's made
Matters
it all
is
the way
huge.
up to Canada. My mother-in-law used to listen to them until I started talking with you, Timber, and you started showing me some of these things, and I was like, oh man, they took a page out of Deseret Book's playbook. They're like, hey, if we look, feel, and sound exactly like the church, then we can hijack social authority here and just slowly and steadily just lead them where we want them to go. My brother sent me like a little clip of somebody calling into Faith Matters, and they have the NPR voice going on. They're like, "Welcome back to Faith Matters,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's very
Mm-hmm.
soothing. It feels like you're in an elevator with some cool jazz in the background. It's great. And in that little clip, somebody wrote in. They were like, "Hey, is same-sex sealing going to be like blacks in the priesthood ban?" And I remember the host immediately just started going into reasons how it may be, and I was like, wait a second, hold on. But he did it in a very roundabout way. He used a lot of flowery language, and he was very, very careful with his words. But if you paid attention, you realize he didn't actually have a concrete Orthodox stance on the issue. And he ended it by saying, like, well, I'm open to, God changing his mind. If God wants this to happen, then it's going to happen. It's like, wait a second. Hold on a minute. That's not the God that we know from the Bible and the Book of Mormon, and so, but
Yeah.
very, very similar tactics to Deseret Book, where they have just like that soothing presence, about them. And so people feel comfortable about them. They kind of let their guard down a little bit and are being spoon fed this false doctrine or this corrupt ideology.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest, I like a lot of the stuff that Faith Matters puts out. It's great. But on
Yeah.
the LGBT issue, not one of the LGBT influencers that they've had on has supported orthodoxy. It's always this very vague, implicit language that let's continue faithful, like point to Christ, and it's implicit that things are going to change eventually so that you can live how you want to live. So,
Right, and there's the real issue, right? Is that what
mhm.
for people who don't want to live that way, who are struggling with it, like where do they go? Because everything that you've shown so far, all these organizations are promoting that you stay the way you are, right,
Mhm.
rather than that you change to come closer to Christ. So that just
Yeah,
makes it really difficult for people.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll get into those resources. So I don't know. Do you want to get into that now, or do you want to?
Let's get into some real life examples, because from what I understand, a lot of people that may have followed these people right out of the church, and it's been pretty difficult. But if you want to go ahead, take the floor and let us know what is the damage that these influencers are doing.
Well, just kind of what I was discussing before is because venue platforms like Deseret Book, like Faith Matters, has given people like Ben Chilati and Charlie Bird this pseudo authority on the subject and funneled all these vulnerable people to them, um, for what the church's stance is, how the culture is going to evolve. It's deceived a lot of people, and like I personally know quite a few people who have really been swayed by what Ben and Charlie have said and have decided to uh, leave the church, or break their covenants and start getting into same-sex relationships. Um, and so many of them have this hope that that the church is going to change eventually. I mean, they believe in the church, they believe in the gospel, but on this subject, they truly believe the church will change. And um, it's not just people who struggle with same-sex attraction. It's so many heterosexual members. I mean, look at John Dehlin.
Right.
John Dehlin, in large part, was excommunicated because he was being an ally to the LGBT community, saying that the church is going to change, saying that, well, the church needs to change and that it will change. And among other things he was bringing up, but that was like, in large part, his main issue against the church was that. And so um, it's massive. I mean, I know I don't know personally, but I know some people in different wards I've been in where I have understood that their family members have left the church over this issue. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
heartbreaking.
to that point, like, what if, it's you, Timber, in a room full of all these people who are struggling with this issue? They're not getting the resources they need. What do you say to them? Like, how do you help them through that?
Well, I would just say there are resources out there. If you want to be faithful to your covenants, there are resources available. There aren't many of them, and they're not as well funded. They're not as glitzy, and there's not a lot of marketing behind them, but there are resources out there. And there are plenty of us who are committed to our covenants and to to eternal doctrine, that have joy in our lives, living an Orthodox lifestyle, and staying true to Orthodox doctrine. So yeah, and I'll give a few of those resources at the end of this, but yeah, I just I know there's hope, and I feel like a lot of people say that, well, a lot of these LGBT influencers will say, oh, unless the church changes, you're just going to be miserable your whole life, and you're going to be suppressed and oppressed. And I would say that's just not true. The life of a Christian is a life of submission, submitting our wills to God's will, right? We're supposed to take up our cross and follow Him. We're supposed to submit our will to His will and make His will ours. And so that's where true joy is found. It's not in the church accommodating your sexual attractions. So,
Yeah.
That was very well said.
Yeah, and I would just say, no matter who you are, whether you're same-sex attracted or opposite-sex attracted, all of us have sexual attractions or other desires, appetites, and passions that fall outside of the Lord's will, right? And what's acceptable to the Lord. And it's like, I'm sure there's lots of heterosexual guys that their sexual attraction is they're just attracted to everyone and want to have sex with everyone. That's
Yeah.
against the Lord's will too. So
Yeah.
whether we like it or not, all of us have desires, appetites, and passions that need to be kept within the Lord's bounds. So that's kind of part of the whole shtick, right?
Right. Bridling the
and
natural
Lord,
man.
yeah, exactly. So anyway.
I like that. Well, it seems like they've been able to, I guess, exploit niceness culture, because one of the commandments of the church is thou shalt be agreeable and nice. And that leaves a rainbow flag size opening for these guys to come in here and say, all right, hey, you guys got to do what I say or else you're not being nice, and then you get a bunch of guys that are just like, oh, I guess you're right. All right. It's just like Biff and George McFly. He's just like, hey, where's my homework, McFly? Cuffing him over the head. He's like, oh, Biff, here you go. Here's the homework, and then he flips his nose and he walks out of there, and it's just like, I feel like there's a little bit of that going on here where they're just exploiting niceness and agreeableness culture that has become so ingrained into the church, which is frustrating.
Well, that's totally what it is. I mean, It's people, like I said before, I know all these people have a strong faith in the gospel. They believe it. They love the church, but they think to show compassion and love, they need to support what their gay child is struggling to well, they don't think they need to overcome it. They think in order to support them, they need to allow them to get into a same-sex relationship. They need to allow them to gender transition. And if they don't, then um, they're being hateful, or they're being too on the side of the law rather than on the side of love, when in reality they're one and the same. So yeah, anyway.
Right. And being mean is
Absolutely.
pretty much the worst thing you can be in 2024 and 2025. Is like, you don't want to be called mean or hateful or nasty, because and it
Yeah.
honestly has a lot of serious consequences. I mean, we saw cancel culture in its peak, and like during the pandemic, we saw people getting doxxed, we saw families getting destroyed because they weren't supporting the right people. I think there is a little bit of shell shock with that, where people are like, yeah, I got to be careful with this issue, which is probably why Ben Shalati's leadership was like, I don't know what to do about this, because the average leader, if I were to approach the average leader and I was just like, hey, can I go marry, can I go officiate a gay wedding? They'd probably be like, no, but if he approaches them, gives them that same question, it puts them into kind of this weird tight spot where they're just like, ooh, like they're between like a rock and a gay place, because it's like, well, here's the difficulty is like, if I say yes, then that kind of goes against the doctrine. But if I say no, then you could raise my family to the ground, and that's going to take a lot of courage, and that's going to, because like if he has a big social following, if this leader pushes back, like this guy could hop onto a podcast, easily say like, this man destroyed my life, take him down, and then his followers could go take him down.
Yeah, well, I do think a lot of leaders are trying to do their best and they really just don't know. But to give you another perspective on how pervasive this is, I know at least three different individuals told by three different bishops in different areas. Well, these individuals have same-sex attraction. They were told by their bishop, it's okay to same-sex date and make out and everything as long as you don't have sex.
Well, don't know how I
And
feel
then
about
they
that.
and then they came to me and they told me like, oh, well, my bishop said this, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but your bishop is wrong. Is
Yeah.
we have one of these, and
Right.
one of the nice things it says about here, if I can find it real quick, but it's under like the section about your body, and
I hope they're giving
your
that out
body
at
is
Deseret Book.
sacred. Well, it's for sale, but it says, oh, here we go. It's right here. I don't know if you can see that at all, but it's under the body section. It says, I'm attracted to people of my same sex. How do these standards apply to me? And then it says, feeling same-sex attraction is not a sin, which it's not, right? If you have these feelings and do not pursue or act on them, then you are living Heavenly Father's sacred law of chastity. So, bishops, are you reading this? It says if you do not pursue or act on them, you are keeping the law of chastity. So if you're openly going as close to the line as possible without like, oh, I'm just doing all the same things a heterosexual couple would do in dating, but we're not having any sex, and like that's just
Well, what's
that's
the logical
wrong.
conclusion of that? Where does that go? If you know it's a dead end road, why drive down it so quickly? Like that just leads to more heartache at the very least, right?
It could be fear that's keeping these leaders, in this weird position, or it could
Yeah.
be. I think I like that idea. I think having served in leadership, I think more times than not, it's just a bunch of tired dads that have a lot of kids that are running around and they don't know, they don't have the answers, and maybe they don't make enough time to actually figure out what they're supposed to do in these situations. They're just like, I don't know, I don't know,
Yeah.
kid. And so it makes it kind of difficult. And I get that. There are a lot of tired dads. If anyone who's been to an elders quorum, you just take a look around, it's full of them. It's just full of them. That atheist even picked up on it, heliocentric, who just looked in there. He's like, that was the saddest thing I've ever seen. It was just, and I get it. It's sad, but maybe we wake up a little bit. Maybe we take this a little bit more seriously and figure out like what is the actual standard. I love that they're addressing this in the For the Strength of Youth. That's exactly where we want this, because the youth are very vulnerable. It's a very confusing time for them. And so having those resources out there, and that's a little call out in itself. Leaders, read those, read those books, make sure you're up to date so that you know how to help youth.
Yeah. And I would say, there are things I definitely believe are within the bounds the Lord has set that maybe are not culturally accepted. And I'm not saying same-sex dating that maybe leaders can be more flexible on, but if you're counseling a member that they can do this, it's like that's just not the purpose of dating is to get married. It's not just to have It's not just to have Nickmos,
Right.
So, and
absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. I like that. So let's get into some of those resources that you've compiled. First, walk us through the accounts that maybe we stay away from. If we are an active parent that is trying to raise an active child that follows Christ, which accounts are not going to get us there, and which accounts are going to help us get there?
Okay. Yeah. So real quick, on this, go back to the other one. There's a comprehensive list I put together on my blog, so you can go there and look this up. So I'm only giving like a few of them. So go there for the full list.
We'll put a link in the description.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so the first one I kind of talked about John Gustav Rathel. Again, excommunicated person. Great guy by all accounts, but back in the 70s, he founded Affirmation. Affirmation got too anti-church, like antagonistic towards the church and its doctrine, even for John. And so John split off and created Emmaus LGBT ministry, which is still very, very much promotes the church changing, but they try to stay friendly with the church. So essentially what those organizations are. Both definitely activist organizations, not something you want to go to if you want to keep your covenants. So next slide. This is probably the biggest resource out there that's heterodox. It's Lift and Love. When I served with North Star International, which we'll get to, which is a faithful resource, this was kind of created in response to that, to be more rainbowy and more the Ben Shadi, Charlie Bird crowd. And a lot of leaders who were disaffected by North Star went over to this organization because they're much more progressive in their views. And so just to give you an idea, you see Ben and Charlie there, of course, we already talked about them. They've also promoted people like Blair Ostler and her book, Queer Mormon Theology, which is all about how the church should and must accept same-sex couples and what's the other word I'm thinking of? Polyamorous, like gay couples, and it's very, very, very progressive book on what the church should accept.
Wow.
Another speaker they've had is Lisa Diamond, she's not a member of the church. She's a lesbian in a lesbian relationship, and they've had her speak at her conference, and they have her story like featured on their website. They also have, if you go on their website, they have tons of stories featured of different members getting into same-sex marriages and how they're still living in the church, trying to feature it that, hey, you can do this. You can still be in the church and be in a gay marriage, even though I
Yeah.
really don't like to call marriages. It's not marriage in my book. So
Right.
anyway, so the conference they put on is called the Gather Conference. So that's what that on the bottom left hand corner.
Mm.
That's what that's a flyer for. Okay, next slide. Okay, we'll go to the Orthodox Resources. Okay, so if you're a parent or of an same-sex attracted individual, or you yourself may struggle with that, these are the resources I would most highly recommend. I'm going to plug my own blog here, Musings of a Queer, as in strange, saint. Um, and I tackle a bunch of controversial topics regarding LGBT issues in the church, and so here's just a sampling of them. So
Way to
there's a
start
lot.
reclaiming that word, by the way. Good on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what it means. It means weird,
Yeah.
and I'm a weirdo, so I'll own it.
I'll take it. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
you go.
But it's great for the algorithm, of course, So,
Sure.
all right. So next slide. North Star International is the biggest faithful organization. They definitely don't have as great of marketing as Faith Matters or Lift and Love, but they put on a conference once a year, just called the North Star Conference. They also have a series of videos called Voices of Hope from individuals who are striving to be faithful to the gospel. So,
That's awesome.
so their co-founders are Jeff Benyon and Ty Mansfield. So I served on the board, the North Star board, for 3 years with them. And anything that is from Jeff Benyon or Ty Mansfield is amazing. Definitely look for them and what they put out. Jeff writes a lot for Public Square magazine. Ty Mansfield, I believe he's teaching at BYU now. So they both have same-sex attraction themselves. They're both married to women, thank God. And yeah, they're just amazing. So I've been with Jeff Benyon on some men's retreats, and he's awesome. So
Awesome.
yeah. So let's move to the next one. Here's a couple. These are the only faithful podcasts that I know of. And I've looked everywhere. Sit Down with Sky is with Sky Swanson. He has SSA himself, or same-sex attraction, SSA. He's also married to a woman. He has a couple little kids, and he addresses like tough topics regarding the church and LGBT issues. Sons of God podcast is by my friend Andrew. He doesn't have that many episodes out, but definitely faith inspiring. And he is SSA himself as well. All right, next one. These are some faithful. I think these are the only. There's probably another one I didn't, but these are probably the main ones you could go get. In Quiet Desperation was by Ty Mansfield, and then I think by another couple who, this was initially when Ty really came public, so it's an older book. Exclude Not Thyself is by Sky Sorensen, who does the podcast I just mentioned. Dennis
Down with
Schleicher. Huh? Yeah, he did
Sit Down with Sky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's who wrote Exclude Not Thyself. Is He Nuts is written by Dennis Schleicher, who he was in a gay lifestyle for quite a while, a lot longer than I was. And he joined the church probably 6 or 7 years ago, I think.
Wow.
So he's really awesome. He's very very enthusiastic. He's like a greenie missionary, like always posting about the church. It's awesome. But
That's cool.
I was honestly a little yeah, I was honestly a little skeptical about him at first because I'm like, okay, which stance are you going to take here? And he's posted a couple videos where he's pretty clear that marriage is only between a man and a woman. So that's why I recommend him.
That's
Next
awesome.
book is yeah. So next book is by Preston Jenkins. Um, This Boy and His Mother. He is the missionary that Elder Holland mentioned in his general conference talk. This was
Oh,
a few
awesome.
years ago. Yeah, so he's that missionary who was struggling with same-sex attraction, and he wrote his story in this book. That's what it's about. And I can't remember what's the next slide. I think that's it. That's the end.
Hey, there it is.
Okay,
End.
so
Awesome.
yeah, so like I said, there's a very comprehensive list on my blog. So go look that up. And my blog again is Musings of a Queer Saint. So I also do a support group here locally in Rexburg, but I didn't put that on there because it's only for Rexburgites, whatever you call us.
Rexburgians.
That's funny.
Well, it's for anyone
Well,
in Southeast Idaho, but
there you go.
yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Timber, and talking about this. I know it's a touchy and difficult subject for most, so we appreciate you helping us shed some light on the current cultural issue around it and what we can do to help point more towards the doctrine.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to come on.
Absolutely. I think we're getting close to time. So until next time, I'm Hayden Holm. This is Tanner. We got Timber Harward, and this is Salty Saints.